If you guys enjoy what I do, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free and easy to do. Before we get started with today's video, I have an announcement to make. After years of telling other people's stories, I finally released one of my own. My novel Eternal Reign is available now in both ebook and paperback format for those of you who are like me and prefer to collect physical media. You can grab a copy right now on Amazon through the link in the description of this video. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. In Tuliolal, Brooke Evu, the owner of a very popular restaurant in the city, has been waiting for the Warrior of Light to come by because he has a job for her, one that is extremely important. His establishment serves anyone, whether they're a native of Tural or not, so sometimes he gets a few weird customers. Normally he doesn't care because he's a businessman, so as long as they don't cause any trouble in his place, he minds the business that pays him. But a group of people recently came by who were a bit more weird than usual. They were in the process of starting up a clearly evil secret society, led by a Vieira woman named Apiahi, and they were obviously new at the whole evil group thing since they chose a very public place to have their meeting, and they were talking so loud that everyone heard them. They call themselves the Passage of the Unbound, and their goal is to spread chaos throughout the world. They're what you'd get if you ordered the Legion of Doom off Temu, but their goal is to become a real threat to the world. To do that, they have to acquire real power, and Apiahi knows how they can do that. There are powerful relics around Tural that in their hands could be used to do some real damage, and right now they're in the hands of the few different tribes scattered around the area. She's heard that each relic contains the power of a Tural Vidral, which are animals with extreme levels of power, similar to the four lords of Kugane. Putting that type of power in anyone's hands would make them a credible threat to the world, and since they plan on stealing the objects and heading to Eorzea to cause problems, Brooke Evu thought it might be a good idea to tell people about this little incident, partially because they didn't even order any food before they left. He told the Landsguard, but it turns out that while the Unbound aren't all that good at the whole secret part, they are dangerous. They were not only able to deal with the soldiers that came after them, people from some of the more isolated tribes started showing up claiming that they'd been robbed. Before a more serious hunt could be made for them, the entire group had headed to Eorzea with their prizes. Each tribe has sent someone to recover their stolen goods, but they don't know anything about Eorzea. That's where you come in. They need someone who knows the area and can help them on their mission, and they've been hanging around the restaurant waiting for someone like you to show up. Since each tribesman has their own specialty, they all need someone with a unique skill set to help them deal with the power of their relic. Lord Zenque needs someone who can take a lot of punishment in battle. Nilpine needs someone who has healing magic to counter the diseases that his relic can cause. Shashpia needs someone who can fight up close and give the hunter they sent a chance to put some arrows in their thief. Suhei doesn't know much about her relic other than it's dangerous, so she wants some type of magic user to help her guard against whatever it can do. And lastly, Rahoja needs someone good at taking things out from a distance, since getting close to his relic isn't all that safe for anyone. Suhei is excited to see that the Warrior of Light knows her way around the magical side of things, because she really needs someone who can use those skills to figure out what her people's stolen relic can actually do. They've guarded the thing for generations, but they don't know all that much about it. In the old days, the forests around her homeland were full of very dangerous, terrifying monsters. To keep the people safe, their mages spent a lot of time studying the relic known as the Perch of the Apex, until they learned how to use it. With his powers, they were able to force the monsters out of the forest, which turned it into a much less horrifying place to live. Since the danger was gone, the elders from that time forbade the people from using the treasure again, and they locked it away. Over time, our people simply forgot what the treasure could do. They were at peace, so it didn't really matter all that much, until one of the members of the Passage of the Unbound showed up. He made friends with her people, then sucker punched her husband who guarded the relic, stole it and left. He's been unconscious for days, so his daughter Tepiki left to track down the man who stole the relic. Unlike her father, she's not exactly magically inclined, so she prefers to stab things. Suhei wants you to go back her up, because she'll definitely need the help. The Warrior of Light is more than happy to help, so she lets you know where her daughter went. The thief had said something about changing Razat Han, so that's where you go to find Tepiki so you can track down the thief before he causes some dragon-sized problems. Tepiki figured that her mother would send someone to help her, and since she knows her mother, she's pretty sure the woman's already filled you in, which means she doesn't have to waste time doing it. She doesn't know much more about the relic than her mother did. She just knows that the soul of an owl-type Taral Vidral was sealed inside of it, and the stories say that the person who uses its power will be showered in good fortune, while causing pain and suffering to everyone around him, which makes me wonder why they didn't just destroy the thing if they wanted to keep people from using it. Tepiki had only been around the thief for a little while, but he made it known that he wanted to bring change to Razat Han, which is why she decided to hunt for him there. She figured she would get a hint about the guy's location by trying to find people who are openly unhappy about the way things in the city are run, since those kinds of people are more likely to join someone who's trying to cause chaos. She was right, because her hunt had her find out that the thief had proclaimed himself the savior of Razat Han, and he's been going around calling himself the Justiciar. He's been hunting monsters around Thavnir while proclaiming to the people that he's the only one who cares enough about them to keep them safe. He's gotten a lot of people interested enough to watch him head out into the jungle to hunt things, but they haven't really started taking him all that seriously. Tepiki understands that the guy might not be her thief at all and is really just some adventurer trying to make a name for himself, but she doesn't have any other leads, so she wants to look into this guy. From what she's heard, he gives speeches out in the smaller settlements around Thavnir, so the two of you head out there to start your hunt. Since the Justiciar is trying to get attention, it doesn't take long to find a kid who saw him not that long ago. He gave a speech about saving people from nearby danger, then went off to fight it alone. Since the Radiant hosts spend a lot of effort trying to keep the people of Thavnir safe, one of them followed the guy so it won't be all that hard to find his trail. You don't find the Justiciar himself, but you do find an unconscious member of the Radiant host and a very dead plant creature, all surrounded by some not very small rocks. The soldier wakes up when you get there, and he lets you know that he did catch up to the Justiciar right when he was getting ready to fight the monster. He acted like the thing was super dangerous, but the creature wouldn't really be a threat to anyone who's used a weapon before. So the soldier was going to deal with it himself, but the Justiciar pulled out a weird relic. The soldier was kind of curious to see what the thing would do, but when it activated, rocks fell out of the sky and hit him and the creature in the head. Since the Justiciar wasn't laid out next to him when he woke, he figures that the guy must have not been hit. That proves to Tepiki that the Justiciar is her thief, so she knows she's on the right track. After making sure that the soldier gets back to his barracks without passing out, since getting hit in the head can cause some lasting damage, the two of you get started on figuring out what to do next. The one constant in all of the legends about the Perch relic was that the person who used it would avoid getting hurt while injuring everyone around him. So the Justiciar might have both been protected from and caused the rocks to fall. While you're talking, a kid runs up telling you that the Justiciar had come back not long after you left, claiming that he'd taken down a monster that had knocked out a Radiant. He was laughing about it despite the fact that he had just left a Radiant out where he could have gotten eaten by anything. The local kids aren't worried about that part. They just think it's cool that this guy might be stronger than members of the Radiant host. The kids think the guy is cool. Their parents not so much. And Tepiki thinks the whole situation is strange. Outside of stealing the relic in the first place, the Justiciar isn't really doing anything all that evil with it, which doesn't fit what she's heard about the passage of the Unbound. That doesn't change the fact that she has to get the relic back, but if the guy starts being looked at as some type of hero, that will make her job a lot harder since beating up people's favorite celebrity is something that is frowned upon. That won't make Tepiki hesitate to put a sword through the guy though, since her father was responsible for guarding the relic, and now that it's been stolen, the people aren't all that happy with him. While the two of you are hunting for the man, more and more rumors of him killing monsters start to spread, and even though the things he's fighting aren't anything to write home about, more and more young people are starting to idolize him. The main thing he seems to be working toward is making people turn against the Radiant host by claiming that they aren't working hard enough to keep the people safe, which is why he had to step up and do the job. Since kids are easily influenced, it's actually working. That means tracking him down before he can cause children to start causing problems in the city is a top priority. So the two of you start asking around in Razat Han to see if anyone knows where he is. The Radiants have started hunting for him more seriously than they had been before, so they're more than happy to help with your investigation. After Tepiki tells the alchemist about the incident, they make her a powder that should let you detect magic that's been used in an area. That way you'll be able to follow the trail of the stolen relic's powers. It'll only work for someone who can use magic, and since Tepiki has 0 skills in that area, that job falls to you. She did memorize all of the different spots where people claim to have seen the Justiciar, so the two of you head to the most recent area out in the Perfume Rise to see if the powder works the way that it's supposed to. There's another fallen rock in the area, and after using the powder on the rock, the Warrior of Light can see that magic was used on it, so the rock that had knocked the Radiant unconscious was summoned out of thin air. One of the Perch of the Apex's abilities is to apparently make it rain boulders. Considering the fact that the Justiciar barely knows how to use the relic, he's obviously not tapping into any of its real abilities, because there's no way the only thing such a supposedly dangerous relic can do is give people concussions. A Radiant comes running up to the two of you while you're discussing it, and he's looking for a little girl who ran off by herself to join the Justiciar. Her mother is worried since there are a lot of things around the area that can eat her, so you pause your hunt to track down the little girl. You find her while she's on the verge of becoming walrus food. Fortunately for her, you keep her from getting eaten, and Topeki lets her know that she shouldn't be following the Justiciar since he's a thief. But the girl still thinks he's a hero regardless. Nearly getting eaten did scare her enough to make her not want to be out and about anymore on her own, so you take her back home and get back to the hunt. Once you get the girl home safe and sound, Topeki lets you know why she seems to have just a bit more hatred than necessary for the Justiciar. That's because she's the reason he even knew where the relic was in the first place. He had showed up in their village pretending to be a merchant, and he had asked a lot of questions about the perch. She hadn't thought him being interested was all that odd, so she told him everything about it, including the fact that her father was the one guarding it and where, because giving out sensitive information to strangers is always a smart thing to do. She knows he's a bad guy, so having people think he's anything more than a conniving scoundrel is very annoying to her, especially since aside from robbing her people, she still can't prove that he's evil. He still hasn't slowed down with his monster slaying, which has even more people praising him around Thavnir. But there is something odd. He only seems to be fighting seedkin, never any other type of wild beast. It's even weirder how he always just so happens to have people around to save when these creatures pop up. Not once have these seedkin attacked someone without him being there, which makes Topeki wonder if he's bringing the creatures out himself, then saving people by dealing with the monsters that he let loose. That thought has been floating around with some of the members of the Radiant host too, so it's definitely worth investigating. So the two of you head to a place called Giant's Gall Grounds, an area where quite a few of these attacks have happened. That way you can either find one of the creatures or catch the Justiciar in action so you can end this little hunt once and for all. The Warrior of Light and Topeki don't run into the Justiciar, but they do manage to capture one of the plant creatures that he's always fighting. Instead of finishing it off, the two of you take it over to the alchemist at the Great Work so they can examine the thing. It doesn't take long for them to discover that the thing isn't exactly your run-of-the-mill plant creature. Somebody had used some chemicals to make it grow really fast. Those chemicals also make the creatures a lot more violent to the point where all thoughts of self-preservation are thrown out of the window. The specific ingredients that are needed to make this plant version of HGH cost way more money than the average person has. So the Justiciar, if he's the one who's creating these creatures, must be very, very rich. Someone with that type of money probably wouldn't go out to gather the ingredients themselves, which means talking to some merchants who have close ties to the alchemist might be your best bet. That works out better than either of you could have hoped for, because one of the merchants turns out to be the guy's father, something he reveals when he accidentally calls the Justiciar by his real name, Virazon. Virazon stole the materials to make the plant growth potion and the maps that have helped him learn the area around Thavnir from his father, and he's been using those to create his fake hero persona. The man had always fantasized about being a hero from the time he was a little kid, so since he was interested, his father had paid a lot to have him train with a bow and arrow so he'd have the skills needed to try and make his dream a reality. He got pretty good, but he wasn't exactly the hard-working type, so he never put in the effort to become anything special. He tried to skip the steps and sought to buy fancy equipment and potions and stuff to make him look like a big-time adventurer, which annoyed his dad to the point where he gave his son some money and kicked him out of his house. He hadn't seen him for years after that, not until he showed up to his house calling himself the Justiciar. He said his heroic deeds during their time apart had caught the attention of the Passage of the Unbound, and they had helped him get enough power to outdo all of the heroes of the world in exchange for his money. They obviously let him join just to pay their bills, because Virazon is clearly a moron. But after you tell his father who the Unbound actually are, he decides to tell the Radiant host what he knows if it will help stop his son. Once the truth about who the Justiciar really is starts to spread, his popularity starts to drop, but not by much, since facts never really matter much to fanatics. He's recently been seen handing out letters to some of his supporters. Whatever the letters are, they probably say something that you should know, so the Warrior of Light and Topeki head to Razad Han to see if they can get their hands on one of those letters. It turns out that he's been trying to get his most devoted followers to meet him somewhere, and it also turns out that the person who knows where he is the same guy who sold Estinian a map after the final days came to an end. He's still doing shady business, which is good for you, since he recently had a guy come by who was looking for a map into Uznair. The merchant sold him every map that he owned, saying that he didn't know which one would lead him where he wanted to go, but he knew that he had the map that he actually needed. He figures Virazon found the one he wanted since the letters he's been handing out have a copy of the map on them. There will probably be a few not-so-savory types crashing the meeting though, since the merchant has heard that some of the bandits in the area don't like the Justiciar all that much. His escapades have interrupted a few of their thieving operations, so they've been looking for an opportunity to get rid of the guy. The merchant doesn't know the exact spot where the meeting's supposed to be, but it is somewhere out in the Shroud of Samga, so you go to let Topeki know, and the two of you head out there. There are quite a few people heading to this secret meeting, so it's not exactly hard for you to follow one of them to the right place. The meeting clearly went poorly, because when you get there, most of the people are either scared or injured, and some really big rocks are laying around Virazon. He recognizes the Warrior of Light because there aren't many people in the world who don't, but for some reason he expected you to be nicer to him despite the fact that you're traveling around with one of the people he robbed. The guy's an idiot, and once Topeki reveals his real name, he decides to stop hiding his face, since it will make it easier for him to get famous if people know what he looks like. He hadn't actually attacked the people who had come to the meeting on purpose. Some of them who had shown up weren't actually his supporters. They had attacked him and the artifact had responded. A lot of power starts to flow into Virazon when the Warrior of Light gets ready to attack him, and before she can, a lot of rocks fall, separating the man from you. He does want to fight the Warrior of Light, which is more proof that he's an idiot, but he wants to do it in a better location, so he takes off, leaving his supporters behind. Once he's gone, they let you know exactly what happened when the meeting had started. Virazon had done his usual speech about being the hero of Thavnir before he got to the topic of how angry he was about all of the rumors that were being spread about him. He had called the meeting so he could get everyone there to head out and start working on fixing his reputation. That was around the time where two of the people who had snuck into the meeting to hurt him attacked. When they did, the rocks started falling on them and everyone else in the room. They had fallen right up until the Warrior of Light and Topeki had shown up. While Virazon did attack everyone in the room, he hadn't started the fight, so he wasn't exactly doing anything wrong. The people who tried to kill him, however, did, so Topeki gives them the option of turning themselves into the Radiant Host or fighting her and the Warrior of Light. Most people would choose jail time over having their soul and body separated, so they turn themselves in while everyone else heads off to get medical attention. One thing Topeki did notice was the size of the rocks that Virazon had summoned this time around. They were way bigger than the other ones, which could mean he's learning to control his powers better or something else has happened. After the meeting incident, no one sees any signs of Virazon, but Topeki does get a bit of good news. Her mother sent her a letter saying that her dad's awake and he's made it to Tuliolal. She would go to see him, but she's about to go out with the Radiant Host to hunt for Virazon, so she wants you to go and talk to her father and see if he knows anything about the Perch's power, since he is the one person who spent the most time with it. Suhei isn't surprised to see that you came back to Taral alone, since her daughter isn't the type to get sidetracked once she has something she's focused on. And while her husband Netsi had been in the city, he didn't stay long since he's eager to help his daughter in any way that he can. He's gone off to the forest to try and find some info on how the Perch works, so once his wife points you in the right direction, you go to check on him. You find the man while he's facing a very large owl. The thing hadn't attacked him yet, so you deal with it before it gets the chance to, since Netsi clearly hasn't fully recovered from his injuries. He's heard word about what you and Topeki have been dealing with, and even though he was the guardian of the Perch, he hadn't known about its abilities. So he started trying to learn more about the creature that was sealed inside of it. It had started out as an owl before it ascended, and the creatures tend to keep some traits from their original form, so he figured trading a few punches with the owls would teach him something about the Perch. None of the owls can summon rocks though, so that was clearly a talent that it got after it transformed. What he did notice is that the owls never attacked first. They only get aggressive when something threatens them, but the minute it gets scared, it gets very violent, and the more scared it gets, the more ferocious its attacks are, which could explain why Virazon is able to use the Perch without any effort. The thing turns on when something threatens him, and it stays on until he's out of harm's way. That will make him hard to beat even by someone as strong as the Warrior of Light, because the stronger his opponent, the more afraid he will be, which could cause the relic to pull an entire mountain down around him. According to the story of how the creature inside of the relic was beaten, the thing wasn't killed by any hunter. It got so afraid that its powers went out of control and it killed itself on accident. That could happen to Virazon, which I'm pretty sure no one would lose any sleep over, except for the fact that he might bring down the entire city of Razadhan with him, which is a bit of a bigger problem, so you head back to the city to let Topeki know what you learned. Before you get the chance to tell her anything, Virazon shows up in the city and proves just how out of touch he is, by claiming that he's going to become the king of Razadhan, because he thinks he'll make a better leader than Vritra. Absolutely no one, not even his own father, thinks that makes sense, and the Radiant host thinks that this would be the perfect time to lock the guy up, right up until boulders start falling out of the sky. Not wanting to cause a fight in a place where the death toll would be catastrophic, everyone lets Virazon leave. The fact that he didn't seem worried in the least despite being surrounded by enemies proves to the Warrior of Light that he does understand the relic's powers. Once you explain to Topeki what her father figured out, she finally understands why Virazon would be so eager to fight the Warrior of Light when he knows he has absolutely zero chance of winning. Being the target of one of the strongest people on the planet should let him draw out the full power of the relic, but since he doesn't know how the creature inside of it ended up offing itself, Topeki thinks that giving him the fight he wants is the best way to put an end to this whole thing, as long as it happens far away from people. Topeki gets the Radiant host to help find a battlefield that will keep innocent people out of harm's way, and it doesn't take too much effort to get Virazon to come out there. He seems extremely confident right up until the fighting starts. Then he realizes that while he calculated his odds of winning, it turns out that he was really bad at math. He gets so scared that the relic overloads and starts to go out of control, so he tries to run away and gets knocked unconscious by a rock that should have killed him. Without the relic, he's absolutely no threat to anyone, but that doesn't stop the Radiant host from locking him up while you and Topeki head back to Tuliolal. Her parents are happy to see her back home, but while they want to lock the relic away like they did in the past, she thinks it'll be better if people knew what the relic was capable of and learn how to use it properly just in case they need it. Her father thinks that might lead to one of their own people deciding to steal the thing for their own purposes, but Topeki is pretty sure that telling people how that ended for Virazon will be enough of a deterrent. After a while, her father starts to think that it's not a bad idea, and Topeki will be the perfect person to get the process started since she's now the one person who knows more about the relic than anyone else. This concludes the story of Dawntrail's Caster role quest. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, comment, share it, and subscribe. Grab a copy of my novel on your way out, and I'll see you all next time.